do that the members' money that we manage or oversee on our behalf, we're not about to actually, recklessly, invest in a way that, and we shouldn't, and we are not going to do that. We are a defined benefit, meaning, whatever we promised members, or at the beginning, they must get on retirement. We are a fund that must be there in 50 and 100 years, and that's why we celebrate when we achieve a 9.62% return, year on year, because it simply means the fund is growing, and then we become very excited because we are not losing money, but pensioners at the end of the day are benefiting. And as you saw the slides, when that green bar increases to levels that talks to 2 trillion, 4 trillion, or 200 billion rand more year on year, it's something that we want to see. But however, we are not going to be investing in projects and programs that will diminish that money. So but we can come with more details later on when we come back to you in August, if this is an issue that, and we can give examples. I think the other day there was a statement that a video, TikTok, or secular that was going social media around one of the leaders of the Democratic Alliance, issuing a statement that we are going to be taking pensioner money instructed by the ANC to throw into ESCOM, etc. We had to immediately come up with a statement that explains our stance on this thing, because that was untrue, and it remains untrue, because no one is going to coerce the GEPF into making investments that are not in terms of member benefit. Honorable Latsane, you asked a question around, and Brian can explain that, and in terms of how it works, in terms of member value, and then how we normally process. So Brian, please prepare to answer Honorable Latsane on that. Since maybe Mr. Kekana, the deputy chair of the board, can maybe answer this directly, whether there is, since chair, I've been in this, we have not had to deal with any of the widows directly, but I can imagine maybe Sfiso can also explain that if there has been any approaches by the widows. I know the widows approached us when I was still DG of National Treasury before, and we had to engage with this matter, and that's why it's currently a SARS matter. But whether it came to us, the colleagues can maybe explain that. Sfiso, again, please just generally talk about the investment policy and what it is all about. But the key issue, Chair, and we've got such many matters, by the way, that are similar to Daybreak. But I think we will prepare thoroughly for this one, so that by the time we come back to you, later on, we come with details and information and the actions we've taken and the various interactions we had with the PIC. And then it will actually be better if we appear with you, in front of you with the PIC, because that will make the discussion more meaningful and more engaging in terms of what these issues are, especially around a matter like Daybreak. And again, maybe Brian, you can talk about also the benefits and when members are not happy as to what happens, and then we can take it from there. But yeah, the key for me that I took, was what Honorable Dutoit was mentioning, that we will not make reckless investments. We'll ensure that member value is enhanced at any given point in time. Sfiso? Sfiso, you are muted, or we can't hear you.
Hi, Chair. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. So I'll repeat. So I'll address the question. So for further details around the investments of the GEPF, on the annual report, it's page 57 up till 64. So the investment strategy of the GEPF is primarily driven by the investment policy statement. That's also a publicly available document, the investment policy statement on the GEPF website. So primarily, if I were to summarize it, is that our investments are guided by what is called the strategic asset allocation. So that is the asset allocation that the fund needs to maintain in order to meet its long-term investment objectives. Those investment objectives are to meet liability payments that are due to members and ensure that the fund is financially viable over time. That is, the assets always exceed liabilities. So that SAA, as we call it, the strategic asset allocation, is basically the proportion of assets that you invest in. Assets like equities, bonds, etc., and also a proportion of the money that you can also invest offshore. So that's standard investment practice for all pension funds, including a defined benefit fund such as the GEPF. So how that is derived is, the chair referred to it earlier on, it's an asset liability modeling exercise. So what we do is, in conjunction with the fund's actuaries or the evaluators, we then project all expected payments going into the future, at least around 90 years. We then devise an investment strategy that will ensure that the fund remains viable. So that's how those proportions are derived. So in answering that question directly, is that is the key input and prerogative that the fund basically busies itself with in terms of the investment strategy. And there is a consideration that's made to all asset classes, including government bonds. And that's standard practice across all pension funds. So the actual bands around all the asset classes that we invest in is also disclosed in our investment policy statement. Around 50% of our investments is in equities, around 40% as well as in bonds, and then the remainder is offshore properties, etc. So we do invest in government bonds, and that's primarily because of the investment case provided by government bonds. By government bonds, I mean bonds which are issued by National Treasury and have the government guarantee issued by a sovereign. So they are long-term in nature, which aligns with the liabilities of the pension fund. They also offer inflation protection, which is very rare in terms of an investment vehicle such as a bond. So the only party that issues, for example, a bond referred to as index-linked bonds, which gives payments which link with inflation, generally is a government. So that's primarily one of the reasons why we invest in government bonds. We have long-dated inflation-linked bonds, which primarily then match the long-term liabilities of the fund. So one would also note when viewing, let's say, the primary holders of government bonds issued by National Treasury, I think around 60 to 70% even of holders of government bonds are South African companies, and primarily within the savings sector. Most government bonds issued by Treasury, the National Treasury, are held by pension funds in the country, including the GEPF. So it's not a non-standard thing for pension funds to hold government bonds. And notwithstanding that, we do strive for diversification, and that's why we invest across different asset classes as informed by our asset liability modeling exercise, which I referred to earlier on. So that's to deal with that first question. The second question, which is a bit broader and is related to the first, is around the investment policy. And I'll also then touch on the relationship that we have with the investment corporation, with the Public Investment Corporation, or the PIC. So if I were to maybe broadly define what's called the investment process, is that you have what I referred to earlier on as the proportions of assets that you invest in. That's the asset allocation, or the strategic asset allocation. And then within each asset class, you invest in direct instruments, right, or securities. So the GEPF is responsible for the asset allocation, or how much we invest in each asset class. And then within each asset class, the actual securities that are bought for example, any stocks that are traded on the JSE, that's the responsibility of the PIC. So we have a principal-agent relationship with the PIC. The GEPF is the owner of the assets and mandates the PIC via an investment management agreement, which is a contractual agreement with the PIC, which then implores them to manage those funds of the GEPF according to the GEPF's investment objectives, which are stated in the investment agreement itself. So what that agreement also would then implore is that the GEPF does exercise oversight over the management of these assets. And that agreement, I think it's a point that bears emphasis as well, is that in law, it's called the discretionary management agreement, which means that the PIC is afforded discretion to invest within those asset classes as described in a manner that they see fit, that will enable the GEPF to meet its long-term objectives. So we hold them accountable for the actual result, which is meeting the investment objectives. But in terms of the manner in which the investments happen, that falls within the domain of the Public Investment Corporation. So I hope that then highlights, at principal level at least, the investment policy of the fund and the relationship with the Public Investment Corporation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be taking the benefits-related questions. There was a question regarding what will happen to a member when they pass on as part of the, or soon after retirement. So according to the rules of the fund, the fund allows for a 5-year guarantee period. And what that means is that if a member is to pass on within that 5-year guarantee period, they'll be paid the full pension for the period that is remaining of those 5 years. And then immediately after that, the surviving spouse, if any, will continue, will receive the reduced pension going forward. So if I was to use the specific example given by the honorable member, let's say the person who passed on was earning a pension of 100,000 a year, and then they pass on within 2 months after retiring. It means they still had 58 months in which they were supposed to receive that full pension payment. So they'll get paid for the 58 months, that full 100,000 as a balance. And if they have a surviving spouse, that spouse will then start receiving from the next month a reduced pension. So if the option that they chose on retirement was for the spouse to receive half of the pension when they pass on, that spouse would, in addition to the 58 months payment, which is paid as a lump sum, they would then receive the reduced pension of 50,000 going forward. If the pensioner does not have a surviving spouse, that remaining payment from the guarantee period, so that the 58 months worth of pension that would have been paid would be transferred to their estate. And then beyond that, there would be no further payment. I think there was a secondary question about whether that practice is fair. So we have to understand the underlying concept of a defined benefit fund. So when you look at a defined benefit fund, it is a vehicle that groups people together, and we share, and the people share within the risks. So when a defined benefit, or when the benefits are designed, they're designed looking at the average person. It is very difficult to individualize within a defined benefit fund. So you cannot differentiate and say that, okay, maybe this person is single and this one has a family of 6 and so on and so on. The benefits are designed looking at an average person. What then happens is that within a population or within the membership, you will find those who might not have a surviving spouse. And if they're unfortunate to pass on within the guarantee period, then yes, they would have received pension payments for a shorter period. But what I always tell members is they have to understand whatever risks they'll be taking if ever they decided to leave the fund because of that issue. So just to throw some statistics, the average pensioner within the GPF is expected to live up until the age of 83. If, for example, someone who's single and does not have is not married and does not have any children who could potentially inherit the pension payments, if that particular person was to decide to withdraw from the fund and draw their pension from a living annuity in the private sector, they'll then be taking on the risk that they'll survive for too long a period. So, for example, if they're to purchase a living annuity and withdraw at the maximum rate to try and match the pension they would get under the GPF, there is the possibility that they could run out of money by age 79. So they could face a prospect of 4 years where they would no longer have a pension income. So I think it's always going to be difficult to give a correct answer on whether it is fair, but what is important is to make sure that our members understand the risks they'll take on if they were to ever move out of the fund. There was a question regarding complaints from widows regarding the tax changes that were imposed for pension for spouse beneficiaries who were drawing an income from more than one source. We did receive a lot of complaints, but they were not only, I think it was also just general pensioners and not just the widows. So when the legislation change was implemented, I think it was the higher rates were applied to all pensioners who were receiving more than one source of income. And then what the fund did is we did engage with SARS, and we engaged with our members and gave them the option to remain on the same, to be charged the same tax, but with the understanding that they would have to pay SARS whatever outstanding amounts would be required whenever they are assessed by SARS at the end of the tax year. And this communication was sent out to all our pensioners, and we are in the process of sending reminder communication. And since that communication, I think the queries and complaints regarding that issue have reduced significantly. There was a question on whether we have a call center. So the GPF outsources the administration function to the Government Pensions Administration Agency, which is the GEPF. The GEPF has a dedicated call center which attends to GPF queries. Due to the sheer volumes of the GPF, the call center does sometimes get overwhelmed and experience challenges, but generally it is functioning well. There was also a question on whether we have an ombudsman or a mechanism for members who are not satisfied with the GPF, whether there's a mechanism for them to lay complaints. So in 2021, the GPF launched a voluntary ombuds office, which is called GEPO, the Government Employees Pensions Ombud. The GEPO operates independently from the GPF and handles any complaints or disputes from members who are dissatisfied with their pension outcomes or who feel that they've been treated unfairly by the fund. So we do have a voluntary ombud, and they attend to any member complaints or valid member complaints. Thank you, Chair.
Who's next?
Thank you. There's a question also that we didn't. Let me try. I've just noticed now, Chair. You did ask a question about the exact relationship with the PIC, especially, but Sfiso did address it to an extent. But the reality there is that we have existing mechanisms of engaging with the PIC, including, quarterly board-to-board meeting, whereby, the board of the GPF sit with the board of the PIC and engage, and we've got standing items around, programs and projects that we deal with, whereby in a way we've exercised or we are we are perfecting our oversight role, and they are able then to account on anything that we deem needs an explanation or a deeper engagement in terms of the investments that they do. And by the way, not necessarily in the quarter under review, but a recent example, even went to a point where we even in some cases had to even seek a legal opinion in terms of to what extent can we go into them even after having signed to them an investment mandate, and where, as Fiso explained, on our behalf they exercise their mandate, whereby, and then we've seen increasingly where many people, many companies come and complain to us and say, but the PIC, you are the beneficial owner, but the PIC is not doing X, Y, Z. Can you intervene? So the engagements do happen, and obviously the engagements in some cases will obviously not be very pleasant, because we would come, there would be at a point where we go deeper into some of the complaints that come from the public or complaints. But we take our role very seriously insofar as that is concerned, because we don't want to leave things and say, sorry, we cannot do anything because we've left it to the PIC. We are beneficial owners, and ultimately we are definitely responsible. And then we have to ensure that the member value, as I said at the beginning of my presentation, that it's all about member value, and where we feel that the PIC, we're able to engage and have a meaningful engagement with them in advising each other as to where the most appropriate and possible course of action that they should be taking, without actually, as Fiso indicated, dictating, because there is a mandate, and then there are mechanisms built into the agreement to ensure that we play our oversight role, Chair. Thank you. Unless, I don't know, Bra Eddie, if you want to come in, or if any of the members are on the line to come in on any matter. Mr. Kikana?
No, thank you, Chair. I think you have covered most of the parts, because in essence, we actually had to make the committee aware that we are also members of the principle on responsible investment. We don't just actually undertake that. We have recently any investment because of we just follow what is actually required. We have recently even attained an AA rating from that particular as a fund that is actually observing those principles. We are also signatories of the CRISA Code. We are actually one of the leading components of that particular code in South Africa. We undertake those particular responsible investment initiatives. We also play our oversight role in all the investee companies through the interactions that we have through our governance structures between the two service providers, both the PIC and GEPF. GEPF through the service level agreement, and the PIC through the mandate. So we are not only confined to the investment mandate or the service level agreement. Through our continuous interaction with the service providers, we are able to actually play our most important oversight role over these particular service providers. As you have also observed, since the Empathy Commission, we were able to actually make sure that now the recommendations by the commissions, we are actually in constant interaction with the PIC around those particular matters, and actually following on all the developments in terms of the implementations of those recommendations. So by and large, we are playing our expected oversight role over both these particular service providers and even other related service providers that we interact with. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson of the committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Colleagues, are there any follow-ups? No, I don't see any. Can I just say that, firstly, colleagues, I think that listening to them, it's very hard for us. Normally what we do, Chairperson, is we also ask our research office to do an assessment of the submissions that entities and the department and SARS make to us. So they also have more technical skills and can assist us in carrying out our oversight role. We don't have the technical skills the array of people you brought here do. So once again, it's a lopsided thing. That's not your issue, Chairperson. That's our issue as Parliament, constant failure to provide us with the necessary resources to carry out effective oversight on technically complex issues that we confront in this portfolio. But be that as it may, on the surface, it seems very good to me, your replies. I don't have any further issues. I think on paper, it looks very good. Your replies are very good and quite comprehensive. So the only thing I can suggest, and you picked this up yourselves as a team, is to communicate simply and more effectively, hopefully in all the languages, to your members. But obviously, members are driven by emotion because the pension issue, as you know more than us, is very psychologically and emotionally challenging. And the best of you will find it very hard to convince a pensioner or a beneficiary who feels that he or she or they are in some other way prejudiced and not getting what they due. This is generally also not your problem because we as government and we as Parliament are increasingly distrusted by the masses. So they have this deep suspicion of any state institution, sadly, whether it's us or the police or the justice structures and so on, all of which makes the pressure on Parliament and government in particular, as we ultimately are responsible for, this country being where it is, and the ruling party in particular, but all parties, in my own view, to different degrees. So we have to do more to win credibility. So you bear the brunt also of our failures as parliaments and political parties and government. But I think you're doing well. You see, can I ask a question? This is not my forte. I mean, I'm not a finance person. I'm here because I'm deployed. I'm a local government person. That's my area of interest and political background. But coming back to, your performance overall, you're getting a 9+% growth, right? Now, it's hard to compare you because, there aren't equivalent sort of institutions easily to use as a barometer, certainly not in the public service. But by the norms of the country and globally, isn't a 9% quite high? Especially given the volatility since 2008 and COVID and the war in Ukraine and so on. Isn't 9% quite high? I mean, that's, look, I'm not an expert in this area, but it just seems to me. Would you want to respond to that? I don't know anybody else.
Brian can respond.
Chair, I think maybe I can assist. So generally what is used as a metric to compare performance is what's referred to as a benchmark, right? So on our annual report in page 57 in particular, you'd see there's the fund's performance and then there's the benchmark. So a benchmark is it's a objective and market observable tool that can be used to basically determine performance. For example, in the news every day, they'll talk about the top 40 index and so forth and so forth. So that is a component of the benchmark, though I'm simplifying that. So there is an objective measure to gauge performance. And 9.71 is basically the fund's performance. And then you do have a benchmark, which is market observable and that we are compared to. So if you go to the annual report itself, our annual return for the year, it's about 12%. Right, and then when you compare to the benchmark, which is 11.68, you'd see there that we then have slightly outperformed the benchmark. So that's basically the standard practice within the investment management industry. There is an objective benchmark that investment performance is compared to.
Okay. Anybody wants to comment on that matter? All right. Look, all I can say is, again, given my sort of limited understanding of the complex issues you deal with, is you're getting an unfair sort of deal, not deal, but unfair, responses from, I don't mean individual pensioners, but people in general who are very worried that, you might, as Fanny said, be under government pressure. And secondly, you might buckle. And because, I mean, if you look at it, if people like you are the chairperson of the board, and generally people who are known to be of a progressive disposition and who are oriented towards a sort of mixed economy with a state role, and some are even committed to a developmental state, then, people are probably nervous, perhaps more than they would be if some financial expert were brought in who's not linked to transformation in this country. So that I can understand, and I don't want to enter the ideological stroke policy area, but I have my own views about, the GEPF, PIC, and our own pensions. Some of it, for members to think about is, like we've been saying, this is something I don't have a mandate to say, but as a chair, it's something you want to think about, the new generation that's coming in next year. If we, as political parties and parliament and government, are contributing to the weakening of the state and the fragility of our democracy, because ultimately, who's responsible, okay? The ruling party in any democracy. If other parties have a role in the failing state, the fact is that's the ruling party. So I think, we've been saying, when are we going to act, Dondo, you know this also well, in terms of the PFMA and hold a DG to account? When are we going to make a DG pay for failures in managing or taking to court? Like, I want to end on this note, colleagues. Just think about it. For many years now, or many years ago, some of us raised this thing, that why is it that the Department of Home Affairs constantly goes to court, and to the highest courts, really, sometimes even up to the Constitutional Court, and constantly lose cases when they know also well that, the first court they went to legitimately told them, hey, give these people their rights, whatever it is. A citizen from Zambia who's living here for 15 years and is married here and has children, why are you deporting that person, right? Then we will challenge it and challenge it and challenge it. And we said, what is the cost? I think one of the opposition parties asked, what is the cost of all of these legal fees? And it's not just legal fees, energy and time of the senior officials of a department. That's consumption of time, energy, which is money wasted. So some of us pushed for this thing, and one of the committees, I think Home Affairs chairperson or somebody said, well, okay, this is what we're going to do. From now on, we're going to put pressure on you. If you keep failing cases that are failable in the first instance, the DG must pay up from their pockets and so on, not the state. Courts have also suggested recently, as you will see in some of these cases, right, that people must pay from their pockets where they abuse state resources by challenging issues that are clearly unchallengeable in a court of law. Whose money is that? Taxpayers. So similarly, isn't it time we thought about this? If the parliaments and governments are not functioning properly, shouldn't we pay up from our own salaries, as we want the DGs to do, for our failures collectively, whatever it is? Right? Think about these things. They're not policy positions, but we have to be fair and we have to wake up, increasingly day in and day out. I'm sorry to say this, but we have to think about these things, colleagues, comrades. What is happening there in Hammanskraal is a nightmare. It is an indictment of our democracy. People are dying because we can't deliver water. What is this all about? A 3-year-old child dies because Eskom electricity cuts off. What is this really? And what is this if not the failure of Parliament to function? Colleagues, we need to wake up, really. Let's not party politicize these things. Human beings are there. Doesn't matter which party is responsible for what. We're all responsible as elected politicians for the failure of the water services there and in fact, ESCOM and its current crisis. So all I'm saying, colleagues, is as a new committee that emerges next year, we have to be tough on ourselves, let alone the executive. That is all I'm saying. Otherwise, we're all going to sink. Doesn't matter which party we come from and whether we're GFP, CEOs or chairpersons, we're all going to sink. So all I'm pleading for is for the members, especially in the new era, now that we're exiting, and people like me are dinosaurs, yeah? We need to think about these issues, comrades, colleagues. I'll leave that for you. It's not a party political position, and I don't care what any ANC comrade thinks. You can speak to me in a study group. It's time we started getting much more real than we have been and take responsibility ultimately for what is going on in this country. Thank you indeed. Those were comments to think about, so there's no need for you to respond. But if somebody does want to respond, I can't stop you as a member. Yes, I hear somebody saying something. I don't know who it is. In Kulileko, can you help?
No, Chair. I think there was talking aside, Chair.
Oh, right. Okay. All right, Mr. Dondo, thank you for your time. Thank you once again. We're very grateful you came to the last minute to this meeting and you managed it so well.
Thank you, sir.
I didn't know you were the chairperson until this morning, which is my failure. Otherwise, I would have phoned you and harassed you more easily. I don't know, Mr. Mabes. You would say, hey, man, don't let us down, Brew, and all that. I had to be diplomatic with Mr. Mapesa. But I must tell you finally, I don't want to sound like he did bongy, but he was very delightful. He was like, he didn't say, oh no, he said, look, I'm on leave, but yeah, okay, I understand your city. He was very, very pleasant, I must say. He handled it very well. And he said, yeah, I understand. I said, look, we hate losing slots now. He says, no, look, let's see what we can do. I'll have to confer with the others. Then before the conversation was ended, he said, no, it's fine. All I'm going to do is check it out, but it's going to happen. And he delivered, or the team delivered on his prodding. And yesterday we did get the submission and our wonderful secretary in Kulileko did send it out. So thank you for all of that. Thank you, colleagues, for your patience. And we hope to see you in August. Kulileko, can you please remind me? I think it's a good idea what you suggested, Chair. We have the PIC and GEPF. In fact, I'll probably have come around to that as well. And one of the big issues on the agenda will be daybreak. We had handed this matter over to the SCOF. So what we could do, my friend in Kulileko, speak to Alan, I'll speak to Joe, and we'll see if we can do it together with that committee too. Okay, thank you all of you. Bye then.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.